Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here today, and thank you for hearing out my vision and my story and how I created what was a campaign to create over 50% turnout in the young voter population, and really a campaign to take back the future of our city and our community and engage young people in the idea of owning their future. It doesn't take many, and it's about the new votes. TIPROS was the vessel. This is the realization I came to early on last year when I saw that there were a lot of people in my demographic that really had given up on politics and policy, had seen politics as something of this national, grand, large idea, this smoke-filled rooms where decisions were made, and you just couldn't affect it. You were but a small little speck of sand on a beach, and there was nothing left for you. You were overcrowded. You couldn't compete against Citizens United. There was too loud of a voice. My demographic, my generation, grew up in an era with hanging chads, with electoral college wins, with tons of money and tons of conversation, but none of it directed at us. And so you could see in this environment that even though there's rallies and there's marches and there are people getting passionate, there wasn't much action. There wasn't much in terms of turning out the electorate, changing the demographics. And so what I realized early on was that in a community like Tulsa, where you have 1 million MSA, 1 million population at large, pretty large community, it only took a few thousand people to change everything that happened. And the reason being is you have to add new people to change the dynamic. You can't convince, and this is something I learned back in 2008 in that election, you can't convince a whole lot of people that have already been voting, been part of the political process, been a Republican, been a Democrat. You can't convince them a whole lot. They've already made up their mind. But if you add new people, you can absolutely change the landscape of the voting population. And so with this in mind, what we decided to do was take a message that would resonate to the demographic that was not turning out. We saw in the statistics where people under 40 maybe had 5%, 10% of the voting population turnout, and that's just sad, but it's also opportunity. And so last year I was the chairman of Tulsa's Young Professionals, and it was also an election year, and we saw there were things like Vision Tulsa, $600 million quality of life bond campaign, the mayoral election and local elections, and obviously the national election that were going to have serious impact on the things and policies that we really cared about and we had been talking about for 10 years, but had not had an opportunity to really impact change or had not really taken advantage of that opportunity. And so what we did is we rallied a large group of people and created a campaign of volunteers to say, it's about getting out and voting. And when we did that, we learned some things, and that's what I want to share with you today. 4 really simple, easy steps that we decided to engage and make sure that they were active parts of our campaign. The first simple step, it's really easy. Show the potential impact of their engagement. Talk about local politics. Talk about the smaller elections where a few hundred or a few thousand people will change the outcome of who your mayor is, or whether or not you have water in your river, or you have an arena downtown, or your state legislature is reflective of your desires. And talk about the local elections. What we found is when we were having conversations with people, it was always, oh, my vote doesn't count. It's going to be decided anyways. We're just a red state or we're just a blue state, and that's how it's always going to be. And so we had to really change the dynamic. When we started to talk to people about elections, we had to talk about local impact, about the fact that 1 out of every 10 students, if they showed up and actually voted, eligible voting students in our community, 1 out of 10, if we get 1 out of 10 of them to show up, they would be the dynamic, largest voting bloc that would change everything that happened in the community. So when you start to talk on that level of the local politics, you really have a resonation and you're able to overcome this stigma of national politics and what has really been emblazoned in our mind of what it is to be part of a political process, what democracy has been. And so you have to show the impact of their engagement. Show them that their vote will matter. Show them that their time will matter. Show them that it will have an impact on their life, and talk about messages that relate to something that they already care about. And what we did is we knew quality of life was a big thing for millennials. For young people, this is the largest thing that they can really take hold of and get impassioned about. And so talking about things like education, talking about things like parks, talking about things like safe communities, talking about things like investment in our future. Those are things you can rally people around. And so when we were able to change the message from this large national broad scope and really hone it down to this local impact and how that has the largest impact on your daily life and how you feel about your community and these things that you really, really care about, that really lowered barriers, mental barriers for people when we talk to them. And it's an important aspect of this campaign, those two steps, making sure they know that their vote is going to count and relating the conversation to something that they're already passionate about and they already want to impact change on. The third step was removing the barriers to participation. A lot of people just don't know how to get involved. It's really simple. All you've got to do is have a conversation with them about whether or not they're registered for this state and make it easy to do. Bring it to them. And so removing those barriers is one, knowing the steps and communicating those steps, but two, bringing the message to the people. And so I'll get into some of these steps a little bit later, but a really simple part of the process is remove the barriers, make it easier to do. And then the last step, make it fun. There's this saying that people have in our generation, and a lot of you probably know it, and it's called FOMO, the fear of missing out. So let them know it's fun. Let them know their friends are engaging, and let them know they don't want to miss out. This is a movement that they want to be part of. So those are the 4 easy steps we took to the streets. We created this volunteer band of radicals, for lack of a better term, that really went out there and said, we're going to talk to our community and we're going to, 1, show that their vote really will have an impact on their future. 2, talk about issues that they really care about. 3, remove the barriers and make it easy to do. And 4, make it fun. And these are the things we employed into our campaign to get out the vote. So first, overcoming the stigma. There's a couple huge hurdles that generally have to be overcome before you can even begin making headway with reversing the course of lackluster millennial voter engagement. The first boils down to this basic sentiment: my vote doesn't matter. So having grown up in the era of over-the-top gerrymandering, and as I said, Supreme Court decisions that have really allowed for large funnels of money to dominate the conversation, we decided to talk about the mayor's election, that there's 40,000 people that are showing up and turning out in this election, and the margin's going to be won on most elections by a 10% spread. So half of 10% plus 1 vote makes every difference. In Tulsa, that's 2,000 people. 2,000 people. That's 1 out of every 10 TCC students. If 1 out of every 10, and we already know 90% of them aren't showing up, having that conversation to say, it only takes 1 out of 10 of you to change everything that happens in our community. The second part of the overcoming the stigma is, really just making sure that they know how to vote and being informed and talking about topics of interest. Because a lot of people, again, think when they talk about politics, it doesn't really impact me. It doesn't really have an effect on my daily life. And then they'll go and talk to their friend and they'll say, oh my God, can you believe that this thing is happening? Can you believe that we're so dumb? And the two correlate. And so if you really just help them overcome the stigma of how they correlate and how they can have an impact and relate it to these things that they already are passionate about, that they're already talking to their friends about, that they're already on social media ranting about, you can really engage and you can evangelize those people and make them your message bearers, and you can bring them out to the community and help them share this message that their friends' votes really matter, and that the issues that they really care about can be impacted for the future, and that they can own their future in turning out and actually voting. So what we did is we really got together and we looked at how do we remove the barriers. First we said, how do we make sure this message is resonating and this message will actually have the impact we want, and then how do we get it out there and how do we remove the barriers. So we remove the barriers by going to where they are. What we recognized is because so few young people turn out to vote, the messages aren't really driven to them. They aren't really manifested in a way that there's going through communication channels that really hit our demographic. It's a lot of paper mail, it's a lot of TV advertising, not a whole lot of social media, not a whole lot of person-to-person interactions at large events where young people are at. And that's intentional. You get the biggest bang for your buck. I get it. I've known a lot of political consultants. They want to spend money on people they know are going to turn out. And when 10% of your demographic is turning out, they aren't going to pay attention to you. So again, we realize that you've got to remove the barriers. You've got to bring the communication to the people in a way that they understand it. whatever that target audience is. For us, that was young voters. And so what we did is we went to them. We didn't wait for them to come to us. We didn't say, on TV and on radio, hey, get out and vote and go find a library or a county election board and get a registration form and fill it out and hopefully you'll understand how to do it right. No, that's not going to happen. You've got to make it easy. You've got to remove the barriers. So what do? We went to St. Patrick's Day festivals. We went to Hop Jam, a local brew fest. We went out to the universities and the high schools, and we talked to people that we knew by statistics weren't going to be registered, and we shared our message. And it really blew up. It really blew up. We registered tens of thousands of people, young people, in the city of Tulsa last election cycle. And it's because we made it easy. We went to them. We talked to them about the issues that they cared about and how they could impact those. So it's about removing the barriers. First step in removing the barrier to vote, register to vote. So we had a really good strategy session with our volunteers, our core group, trained everybody so that they knew exactly what the forms were supposed to look like when they were filled out, and then dispersed them to all these community events. We reached out to every university in Tulsa. We said, let us use you as a vessel to be able to have this conversation with your students, because it's good for you. When your students are out voting, when your students are engaged in this process, it's good for you, university, or it's good for you, trade association, or it's good for you, festival, because it takes it to the next level. And so we went to them. We didn't wait for them to come to us, and we brought that message that we knew was going to resonate because it was topics that were interesting to them. And then, in addition to that, we made sure that they were informed, that they knew who their elected officials were, that they knew how they stood on any given topic that was going to be of interest to that voter. So we had impromptu gatherings. We said, everybody that's going to be on the ballot, come and visit with people that are going to vote. We've engaged them, we've registered them, we know they're going to be at the ballot. And we had hundreds, maybe thousands of people show up across events, showing up and talking to elected officials. The other stigma that we hear outside of my vote doesn't matter is, I don't really know what I'm voting on. And so we made it easy to understand what they're voting on. We brought new voters and people that were putting their name on the ballot, elected officials, together and said, have a candid conversation. Do a speed dating session where you just hop around from table to table and you get to know your county commissioner, or you get to know your mayors, or you get to know your state representative and your state senator. And really, again, remove the barrier. Make it easy for them to understand what it is that they're voting on and why it matters. So we brought them together. In addition, we went out and we went on digital media. We went on social media. We went on the internet for search engine ads. We went on Facebook for Facebook Live ads. We created video content that showed a passionate message of what it means to take ownership of your community, to take it back and to take it to the next level. And so going out there to the community in this way that was communicated to our young people in the community and communicating in such a way that really allowed them to digest the information really easy and to feel like they were an informed voter. There was this thing called the Voter's Guide that the League of Women Voters has done for decades, maybe dozens of decades in the country. And it's a really great little paper document, and they make thousands of them, maybe hundreds of thousands of them, and distribute them throughout the community. Again, it's not the way that my generation understands and digests information. So what we did is we said, let's take that and digitize it. Then let's broadcast that on social media. So let's take this voter guide, let's put it in a mobile-friendly way that somebody can pull up their phone while they're standing in line and get to understand the state questions and get to understand who's on the ballot and what their platforms are. Have links to their website so they can research it and really make it easy to find the information that would help inform those people. So we not only made it easy to vote, we also made them informed voters, made them feel like their vote would really count. So you've now figured out that this is how we really strategized and honed our message to make it effective. This is how we brought our message to the market that we wanted to bring it to make sure that they were understanding and that it was actually meeting the target audience. And then this is how we overcame some stigmas. Really the next final step is make it fun and get them there. So you've got your message, you've got your communication devices, and you've got people that are registered and queued up and ready. You may think you're pretty much done, but really the hardest step is make sure they actually show up. And so what did we do? We went out and we said, what do people not want to do when they're voting? And usually it's miss some other obligation. It's get to work late. It's, for the mom that's trying to get their kids to, school and then get to the office and then get them home and get them fed and then maybe make it before 7 o'clock. It's to find time. Even if you know what you're voting on, even if you're passionate about what you're voting on, life comes first sometimes. And so what do we do to really break down that barrier and get them there? We know we've got them energized, but how do we get them there? So what we realized is early voting was our option. Early voting was really where we had the biggest potential for impact. And so what we did is we threw a party on early voting day. We said, hey, Fridays at the county election board right outside of downtown, you can come and you can vote anytime. Anybody, anytime. You can take Friday. And we said, we're gonna provide food, we're gonna provide a party, we're gonna provide music, we're gonna have a blast, a block party right outside where you go vote. But not only are we gonna do that, we're gonna make it easy to do. So come down and join us for lunch. That's all we said. Join us for lunch, make it easy, take care of it. But also, let us give you an Uber ride. Don't worry about whether you're gonna be able to repark when you get back to the office or whether you have time. Pull up your app in your office, call Uber, and we'll pay for it. And so we partnered to create a code and send people to the polling place at lunch, provide them food, and make it easy to do. Again, it's all about lowering the barriers and making it fun. Throwing a party, throwing a huge party and letting everybody know and giving them that fear of missing out, that they would miss out if they didn't join us. And so that's what we did. We threw a huge party at the county election board. We doubled the turnout for the early voting in the Tulsa County region, and we had a really good time doing it. And so, what we saw was in 2 separate elections, we had an over 50% increase from the most recent elections in our community. 50% increase in young voters. And here's where it really gets fun, is I know every other community out there wants to do that. You want to know, how do I engage my young people? How do I get them really excited about their future in this city? How do I get them to really care about the decisions that are being made that are going to impact that? And this is the playbook. This is the playbook. We've proven it now multiple times. Over a couple-year period, we've proven it 3 times where we've had 50% increases in young voter turnout. And so if you would take this playbook of making it, engaging, of making it fun, of lowering the barriers, and of bringing it to them, if you will do this, you will see that it works in your community. And so my hope and my goal is that you've learned from me today a simple playbook that you can take to the Stillwater, to the Norman, to the Tahlequah, to the Kansas City, to the Portland, to the Austin, any other community. Go find partners, build a coalition, take a message that resonates, and make it fun.